Hello everyone, my name is Dan Sokulski. I'm a certified recovery support specialist with Chestnut Health Systems in Bloomington, Illinois. I'm also a member and co-coordinator of our McLean County ROSC, Recovery Oriented Systems of Care. Hopefully most of you here already know what that is, but we're basically a coalition of community volunteers, representatives from different agencies, people with lived experience who get together to try and bring additional holistic recovery solutions and services to our community's recovering people. So today I want to talk about steps 10 and 11 from a 12-step program. Pretty much everything I'm referencing here is from the Alcoholics Anonymous book, or the Big Book. Incidentally, if you didn't know, it's called the Big Book because back in the day when it was published, 1939, they wanted to give people the sense that they were getting value for their money, so they literally made it a big book with huge margins, large font size, and that's pretty much where it gets its name. So simplest solution is usually the best one, so it gets that name because it was originally a big book. Anyway, I was taught that step 10 is, by this point, we recover, okay? Once we've gone through, we've surrendered our will to a power greater than ourselves, we've admitted that we were alcoholics or addicts and our lives were unmanageable, we've had hope that there's something out there bigger than us that can restore us to sanity. We've done our inventories and made our amends, tried to, on a day-by-day basis, turn over our character defects. And as we're doing those steps and getting to the point of step 10, we start feeling that power flow in. And we start, kind of losing the urges or drinking or using thoughts, and we start feeling connected to people and things outside of ourselves. And sometimes for many of us, that depression and anxiety and fear that riddle us starts to melt away, and we're kind of just, we'll get to it in a little bit, but we're sort of placed in this position of neutrality where we're safe and protected. But the thing is, steps 1 through 9, you'll sometimes hear people refer to like those are kind of the action steps, and then 10 through 12 are like the living steps. In other words, we sort of do steps 1 through 9, and then 10, 11, and 12 just become part of our daily spiritual maintenance. The truth is, most of us go back and rework the steps. We want to get through this stuff quickly, especially the first time. We don't want to be a year in and still not have done our 4-step, because when we do the work, we start feeling the power. We start feeling that connection. We start feeling that spiritual awakening, whatever you want to call it. Basically, whatever it is to you, your soul, your spirit, your sense of being, it just starts to feel lifted. You start to feel awakened. You can stop and smell the roses, see the beauty and grace around you, whatever it is to you, those mundane things that, in day-to-day life that seem like such a bother and hassle, and we had to, get high just to, go do the simplest task, we're not there anymore. We start getting enjoyment and pleasure from life, and we start realizing, life in recovery does have a lot of miracles, and maybe this isn't such a bad deal. Maybe I can go through life and not have to pick up a drink or a drug again. But of course, we do that stuff one day at a time. A lot of times you will see people who have 10, 20 years, 30 years sobriety, and they're just sober. They're not really, they've kind of lost this idea of being recovered and being connected to their higher power. They're just kind of like sober one day at a time, And I've heard speakers talk about, well, my cat's sober one day at a time too. That doesn't mean that, it's spiritually connected and it's out there trying to give back, trying to help people, trying to carry the message of hope and recovery to the newcomer, and it's just easy sometimes as you build time to get complacent and stop doing the things that got you to that point, and then suddenly these people are wondering, why am I having these suicidal thoughts all of a sudden? Or why am I depressed all the time? Why am I engaging in old, dangerous, maladaptive behaviors? Things that really are not indicative of a spiritual lifestyle that, the 12 steps promises us if we do that work. And the big reason is they forget about 10, 11, and 12, or they're sponsored people, and, just kind of let it be a phone call here and there, or a text message once or twice a week. That's not really the idea of sponsoring someone. The idea of sponsoring someone is taking that person who needs that spiritual awakening, who's relying on it in order to live, and getting them through the work, getting them through the steps the way that you were shown by your sponsor, help them get to that point where then they can continue to carry it on to the next person. Sometimes we get stagnant. It's just human instinct, I guess, So this stuff's really important. Our book, one thing that I was listening to a speaker talking about step 11 on the way here, Myers R. From Texas, and he was talking about 10:11. He says, as we move toward God, things get deeper and more enriched, and that's, I think, a good way to put it. The thing is, we can get connected to God, through doing this work, through our recovery program, and then we can, like I was saying, sort of lay back, rest on our laurels, and we start gradually over time losing that connection, and then that's where all sort of that old negative thinking comes in, which then influences behaviors that we're old behaviors basically, or we're just not doing anything and we're kind of just being miserable. We're claiming our sobriety and we're taking our medallions every year, 19, 20, 21 years, but we're not really doing anything and we're not feeling that enrichment. We're not continuing to grow that relationship with the God of our understanding, on a deeper level. 10 in our literature, we're really talking about pages step 10, 83 through 85, basically. One of the things it says in there is the spiritual life is not a theory. This is page 83. We have to live it, okay? So talking about this stuff, thinking or, sort of telling people about all the great things we did and, early recovery, 15, 10 years ago, whatever it might be. That's not really living it, that's just sort of living in the past and trying to expect last month's or last year's recovery to keep us sober today, right? Or to keep us recovered, basically. So it's all about action, right? For years, when I struggled, I've talked about this in other videos in my story, there's a video about that. I was theorizing about the spiritual life. It was great to think about, it was great to sort of research, reading all these different books, Eastern philosophy, books on Christianity. I like the idea of being spiritual, but I wasn't doing anything to get there. And as a consequence, I'd still live in my fear. I'd still experience depression, anxiety, which would cause me to continue to drink or take pills. And theorizing it, thinking about it, wanting it, isn't enough. We got to actually do the work. We got to actually live it, incorporate spiritual principles like faith, like hope, like harmony and love and tolerance into our daily life. And that's where 10 and 11 really come into play. That's really what they're about, is getting us to continue to take personal inventory, and when we're wrong, promptly admit it. That's 10. And 11, of course, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will and the power to carry that out. I'm a little embarrassed. I kind of had a mental hiccup and forgot it for a moment. Okay, so that's really about our daily maintenance, right? When we do something that we recognize we've wronged somebody or we've done something that isn't in line with our spiritual principles, with 10, we go and make it right away. And 11, we're just constantly, one day at a time, trying to improve our our connection with our higher power and trying to understand what His will or its will, her will is for us, and then, summon the power to carry that out. So it's about faith and courage and surrender. Okay, it's not what I think is best. It's about turning my will over and trying to, through prayer and meditation or whatever means that kind of gets you connected. Some people, it might be exercise, it might be through music, but whatever gets you connected and to, get that understanding of what it is that your higher power wants you to do, and then go and take those actions to carry that out. So it also says along the lines of step 10, on 84, we've entered the realm of spirit. Our next step is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. So again, we've gotten to a point now where maybe we don't necessarily understand our higher power, but we feel we're in this realm of spirit, all right? We're in the spirit of the sunshine because we've done the work, we've done our amends, we've done our inventories, we're working on turning over our character defects. We've surrendered our will to the guidance of a higher power. Really what we're just trying to do is, again, on a day-to-day basis, improve, enhance that understanding and effectiveness of what it is our higher power wants for us, and the effectiveness, of course, being how we carry that out, how we carry the message to others, how we be of service, how we try to get other people connected to this miracle that we've been given freely. And then, of course, it also says, continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. All right, so example of step 10. I was working on the men's inpatient unit for local treatment center, and I'd been doing it for several years. Almost always had good relationships with the clients. And there was a moment where we had a client who he was a really friendly, outgoing type guy. His room was right next to the staff desk, so he was always up, kind of talking with different staff members. Characterize him as amiable, friendly, kind. But he was getting to a point where he was getting ready to leave treatment, and he wasn't really sure where, if he was going to get into a local recovery home. He was on a waiting list. He didn't quite have the money together for the deposit, so he had some stuff on his mind. All right. And for about 26 days out of a 28-day program, we'd had this really good relationship. We're in the kitchen doing lunch. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I don't remember the exact details, but we were trying to get the food out, and I probably just said something a little bit too tersely, to get everybody served. And he just kind of had a moment where he snapped a little bit, and he yelled at me and was basically like, "You need to watch how you talk to people," and just different side of the guy. Never would have seen it coming. I was a little bit taken aback. That happened without incident, and there was part of me that was like, how dare he do that? I'm staff, he's a client, and I'm thinking to myself, over the next hour or so, what I'm gonna write in his, shift notes about how he was disrespectful to staff, and had a negative attitude. And I'm thinking about it more, and step 10 comes to mind, and I'm thinking, what's my role in this situation? I had a role to play, and it dawned on me, or, by, sort of praying about it on my feet, kind of pondering it, I realized I owed the guy an amends. I had a part to play in that. And, I spoke to him in a way that I didn't need to, and he's got a lot on his mind, and it's understandable that certain things that might not normally be a big deal might have upset him in this instance. So I went to his room a little bit later and apologized, just said, "Hey man, I'm really sorry about the way I talked to you. That was on me. I didn't mean anything personal. We're just trying to get, things rolling in the lunchroom, and, but that was wrong of me." Just simple little thing. And he accepted it, and he apologized for the way he spoke back, and we were cool, but it was one of those things where if I'd have held on to that and, not made an amends, not taken personal inventory, sort of on the fly, and just held on to that, a resentment might have grown, some bitterness might have grown both ways. And who knows how it could have ended up? It could have been either a lost opportunity to salvage a relationship, or it could have gotten worse, where maybe something else might have happened, that would have even been more escalated. But I know deep down, if I didn't take that opportunity and he would have left, I'd have felt bad about it, and it bothered me, and that's why I needed to make that amends ultimately. Yes, I want the other person to feel good too, but really we do this work for ourselves. We don't want crap clinging to us that we've done and that we didn't make right, because that stuff builds up and then it anchors us down. And it blocks us from that realm of the spirit. All right, so I want to talk about the 10th step promises, okay? So when I was at Hanley Center at Origins down in West Palm Beach, I had the privilege to work with Chris R., a twin brother of Myers, and KCR, and some great staff members, some people that have been around the program for a long time, sponsored a lot of people, really knew how to carry the message and build up excitement for recovery. It was an experience I'd never had at any other treatment center, where, yes, I'd leave other treatment centers wanting to stay sober and having some more tools and having a good feeling about the experience. I never left negatively a treatment center thinking like this was a waste, this sucked. That was never the case. But there's something different down there. And I was down there longer too. It was a long-term place, that was part of it. But they really just cultivated this culture of recovery, that we got to go after this stuff. We got to do everything we can to find that spiritual awakening that's promised in step 12. Because if we don't, and we're really an alcoholic or addict, getting back to the video about the real alcoholic versus the hard drinker or hard user, if we're really alcoholic, that's what our life relies upon. Our restoration is, finding that spiritual experience and maintaining it and growing it on a day-to-day basis. It's not just getting it and then we're done. We found it. We found a spiritual awakening. We're good for the rest of our life. We're just going to kind of kick back Because like I said earlier, as we do that, the other stuff starts to creep in, because it's kind of like rowing a boat with your paddle. You know, you're cruising along as you're doing the action, doing the work in our program, you know, and we're making progress, we're getting down the river. You know, if we stop paddling, we're going to kind of slow down, and then eventually we're probably going to get a little bit turned around. We might even tip over, you know, so we got to keep paddling, keep doing the work, because when we stop, we get further, you know, that connection we get to our higher power starts to disintegrate, and we get further and further away, and that's when picking up a drink or a drug starts sounding like a good idea. Those things that life throws at us, you know, financial situations, relationship problems, employment issues, you know, whatever it might be, that we can walk through when we're connected, we're working a good program, and we're feeling spiritually fit. You know, suddenly that stuff feels insurmountable, and you know, the solution starts sounding like picking up a drink or drug, you know. So it's about continuing to do the work. The big book has like 255 promises, the first 164 pages. And usually when we hear the promises, it's the 9th step promises. It's that, you know, if we're painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we're halfway through. We're going to find a new sense of peace and comprehend the word serenity. Feelings of uselessness and pity will leave us. We will lose financial insecurity. Kind of freestyling that a little bit. It's on page 83. So, you know, it's if we're painstaking about this phase of our development, we're going to be amazed before we're halfway through. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity. We will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we've gone, we'll see how our experience can benefit others. Those feelings of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We'll lose interest in selfish things, gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. And it's all this great stuff. And it says, are these extravagant promises? And then, you know, we usually hear that in a meeting, and then we say, we think not. You know, they're being fulfilled all around us. You know, but the key is, that's the 9th step promises, all right? Early on, I thought I'd hear those promises read in almost every meeting, and hear about them in groups and treatment, and I thought they were just the AA promises. Go to treatment, go to some meetings, and all that wonderful stuff will start happening. You know, I'll lose the sense of self-seeking. Fear will leave me. You know, I'll comprehend the word serenity and know peace just by like going to meetings and you know, maybe having a sponsor and title, but not really doing service, not working the steps. You know, having sort of one foot in, one foot out. We had that video about what the triangle meant, the AA symbol, you know, and remember it's a 3-part program. We can't just work like one part and expect to get this connection, expect to recover. We hear those promises a lot, and if we're new, maybe we think that that's really all recovery is about. And those are some great things, you know, don't get me wrong. But again, it's saying if we're painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we're halfway through. It's saying halfway through making our amends, which is the 9th step. So it's the 9th step promises. That's where the context of those promises in the big book. But the 10th step promises, basically, as I was told by Chris and some others, if the 10th step promise doesn't tell me that I've recovered, then I don't know what being recovered is. It says we've ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol or drugs or whatever behaviors that you're working on. For by this time, sanity has returned. And this starts on 84 and it goes into 85. I'm going to read the whole thing because it's definitely worth it. So think about yourself at your bottom when the obsession is just in overdrive and you've got that phenomenon of craving and all you can think about is getting that next fix or that next drink. And then contrast it with these promises, you know, that are associated with step 10. Okay, yeah, so like I said, we've ceased fighting anything or anyone. This is the bottom of 84 into 85. Even alcohol. For by this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we'll find that this has happened automatically. We'll see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given to us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We're not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We haven't even sworn it off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. That is our experience. That's how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. All right, so a big clause there at the end. And that's the 10-step promises. And he goes on to say, it's easy to let up on our spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We've talked a lot about that in this video so far. We're headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. That's also a promise. Maybe more of a scary one than a hopeful one, but it is a promise. We're not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. All right? Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God into all of our activities. So all these great things, that we talked about in the 9-step promises. The 10-step promises me that my addiction, that my alcohol use disorder will be removed. All right? That I will recover. It says we're not cured. It doesn't mean I can go drink and I can go take painkillers and control it, and just take it as it's prescribed, Xanax, that kind of thing. No. But what it is saying, we've recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And that hopeless state of mind and body is about what we feel when we're at our bottom, or when we're checking into a treatment center, or when we've been arrested again, another DUI, another shoplifting, whatever it might be. And that feels like a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And this tells us that we will recover from that. But again, it says it's contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual program. Or we got to maintain our spiritual fitness, however you want to put it. The daily maintenance. So the maintenance is the work, okay? That's the meetings. That's continuing to incorporate the steps into our life. That's working with the sponsor, being of service, practicing prayer and meditation, whatever else reading the literature. And there's other things that people incorporate, it's good to have some leisure things to, kill some downtime that you enjoy. Family time might be part of it, exercise. But the truth is, some of those other things, exercise, dieting, family, those never got me sober. What really did get me sober was working the steps with a good sponsor to get connected to that spiritual awakening or experience, and then trying to help the other alcoholic or addict, or just people in general. So service, working the steps, if you really want to boil it down. That's what helps us recover. And so suddenly this overpowering compulsion, where our midbrain is dominated, hijacked by whatever substance we're putting in our body, and all we can think about is that next drink or drug or crime, whatever it is, that we like doing, or sex or gambling. It's all kind of affecting the brain the same way. We've lost our power of choice at that point. We really don't have self-control, even though people look at us as, outsiders, as selfish and out of control, and all these other descriptions. That's really just our illness, in overdrive, in full effect. And again, this tells us if we get to a point, we do the work, and we're connected to that power, then that problem is removed. And that's, again, as Chris R. once told me, I don't know if you can ask to be more recovered than that. So step 10, again, continue to take personal inventory. When we're wrong, promptly admitted it. There's really not a whole lot in the book about step 10. It's, some of these things that we went over, it's really not much more than a page or so. But it's vital that we are continuing to do that sort of spot check inventory. When we do our 4-step, we sit down and we write kind of this, chronicle of the resentments and the fears that we have and our sex conduct, and we get it all down on paper, and we go over it with our sponsor in our 5th step. The 10th step is more kind of on the fly. And there is an inventory that we can do. We'll get to it in step 11 in a second here. But it's basically just looking at our day and where did we have fear or dishonesty or resentment creep in? Do we owe somebody an apology? Did we pack as much as we could into the stream of life? Questions like that we can ask ourselves. What I did is I created like a worksheet, with those questions straight out of the book. And I would just ask myself. I've gotten away from it more lately. But early on, in particular, the first year or so, every night I'd go through that, and you could write it in a journal. You could do it in your head. I think it's better to actually write it out. And that was something that they had me do at the treatment center, and it was just a good habit to continue on because it keeps me honest. It's easy to fly through those questions, be like, no, I was good, I was fine. But really, if we're honest with ourselves, there probably was some selfishness throughout our day, or some self-seeking behavior, or maybe we are secretly harboring a resentment or bitterness towards somebody, and we got to go make that right. We got to get that stuff out, because that's sort of the poison that collects, in our mind, in our soul, and it builds up. And again, that stuff is trying to break us from that connection to the power that we have. We've done a lot of work to get to that point. So we got to get that stuff out. So that's really what step 10's about. Biggest thing is it promises us that we recover. It's not every day, oh my God, I'm walking this tightrope. I'm always a recovering addict or alcoholic. How dare I say that I'm recovered? I would challenge you or ask you to think about that. When you get to this point, you have recovered. You're not still sick. Yes, okay, I will never be able to drink or use drugs, like a normal person. But I have recovered. I'm not full of fear. I'm not doing the old things I used to do. I'm doing my best to think of others before myself. That's kind of the stuff that we're looking at when we say we've recovered. What's the point of all this if every day I'm still going to be sick and, sort of dangling over this fiery abyss of relapse, that, oh my gosh, anything goes wrong and I'm going to tumble down and, succumb to the temptation to go drink again. Problems removed. 10th step promises me that I'm safe and protected. I don't think about this stuff any different than I would what chair to buy for an office, or what channel to put on when I get home and I want to watch some TV or something, or what snack I'm going to have. It's not just like this, oh my God, it's dominating my mind and my actions and my thoughts. So that's what we got in step 10. Hopefully you got something out of this. Okay, so on to step 11. Made a whole new mess on the board here. Hopefully some of it comes through, but we'll go over it. Really what we start with step 11, I think a good place is page 45 in the AA book. And I do want to preface once again, yes, a lot of this are quotes from Alcoholics Anonymous literature or the big book, but this stuff applies to whatever your drug of choice is, okay? Problem is the same. The reason we drink and use or gamble, other stuff, is we have that void, that sort of void in our spirit, in our soul, however you want it, God hole, some people might call it. And it works, that stuff works to fill it for a certain amount of time. We get to a point where we don't want to live with it, but we can't live without it, and it becomes torture. They call it sort of the jumping off point, and we got to find something else, something healthy to fill that void with. And fortunately, we have 12 good suggestions along those lines, and a lot of that has to do with step 11. Page 45 says lack of power. That is our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves. Obviously, but where were we to find that power? And it goes on to say that's exactly what this book is about, talking about the AA Big Book. Its main objective is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself which will solve your problem. There's another one of those promises we talk about. That's a pretty big deal, to find something that will solve that problem, because nothing else we tried has worked, right? Multiple treatment stints, doctors, medications, therapists, our own sort of self-will and trying to tough it out. We tried all doing it for other people, whatever, white-knuckling it. That stuff didn't work, so maybe we got to listen and try it a different way. In the beginning, it's not so important where you start. Okay, I'm throwing the word God around a lot, and I understand, maybe that's not kosher with everybody. Okay, but really, it's a lot of times, I think, around the rooms in the recovery community, we use the word God as a term of convenience. It's not the God of Catholicism or the God of Buddha or the God of any specific religion, I guess is what I'm saying. It's something, a term that we all kind of can use to describe this power that we feel in our life and that we have our own sort of unique understanding with. And when we say that word, other people kind of know what we mean. But you could have 100 people in a room, and every one of them could say, God has done for me what I couldn't do for myself, and they'll credit God for their recovery. The definition, or what that God is, could be completely different for every single person. So you have 100 people saying that they believe in God, but it's 100 different types of God, and that's kind of the beauty of the thing, right? It's not important where you start. I've heard a speaker talk about how he was working at a treatment center with a kid who had been struggling, and then eventually, struggling with the God thing. We hear that a lot. It's okay to struggle with the God thing, especially early on. If you're, 1, 2, 3 months into this thing, hell, even a year into this thing, and you're still struggling with the God thing, and you're worried that you're not getting something that other people have. This is one of my big hang-ups. Other people were talking about their connection to God, and I just didn't really feel it. I was giving it lip service, but it just really wasn't there. It was kind of still empty. I was still sort of relying on the old God of my upbringing and, organized religion, which I never really felt a relationship with. And so consequently, I just deep down sort of felt like something was missing, and that, the program wasn't really working, because I was really trying to intellectualize this thing and overcomplicate it and sort of crowbar God into my life without really doing the necessary actions that sort of open the gateway for that power of God to flow in. I've been told God will meet you where you're at when you're ready, right? A lot of times we'll say, I believe in God, but he doesn't believe in me. That's paraphrase of a quote from Bill Dotson, the third aide, the first person that Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob went to in Towns Hospital to carry the message. And they were telling him about, this new program they're going to start with one alcoholic helping another, and it's going to be this great thing. We'll be there for each other. And he was like, yes, this sounds great, I'm in. And then they started talking about God, and he was like, no, I believe in him, but he doesn't believe in me. But really that he came to learn that's not the case. With an open mind, we realized that power's there for every one of us. And that was 7 years. I didn't think that power was there for me, but when I finally took the actions that had been suggested pretty much from day one, I discovered that it was in fact. And it happened pretty quick this last time. It happened in a matter of within 2 months. I had a moment, and I felt the presence for the first time in my life in 40 years, and the hair went up on my arms, and it was just me and a kid who was sponsoring me who had 3 years at the time down in Florida, in this big empty room, kind of like the one we're standing in now. And we're just talking about steps 2 and 3 and just talking about simplifying this God thing. And I felt it for the first time in my life. And then I had hope. I was like, hey, I can actually get this thing too. Anyway, so getting back to the story of the speaker, this kid was struggling, and he finally was like, Thor, that's my higher power, okay? Thor's cool, badass, we see him in movies and comic books, and Asgard will be part of my higher power and all this stuff. And, that actually worked for him in the beginning, okay? And then, this person would see the kid periodically, after he got out of treatment, and he was still rocking and rolling. Thor was still his, higher power, and it was all good. He was staying sober, with Thor as his higher power. And then he saw him a couple of months later, and he had this big tattoo of Thor and, Mjolnir, the big hammer on his back, and he was still rolling with Thor. And then saw him like 3-4 months later, and he asked him how he's doing. He's like, I'm doing good, but, the Thor thing's just not really working for me anymore, and he ended up sort of going with God, whatever that was to him, right? That was his higher power. So a lot of times, we can start with nature, we can start with community, we can start with the group of drunks, G-O-D, or good orderly direction, G-O-D, group of drug addicts, some stigma language there, but, just whatever works early on is the point. And if you don't know, you don't know, and that's cool. Just keep doing the work, right? Step 3 is just like we talked about. That's just about making a decision to keep doing the work with faith, the underlying spiritual principle of step 3, with faith that more will be revealed as I sort of trudge this road of happy destiny, walk with purpose, doing that next right thing, doing that next thing that's suggested, and just trying to surrender my will to whatever the best understanding I have of my higher power is. And eventually, more is revealed. The point there is then, we established something, whatever limited understanding or description we have of a higher power. So step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will and the power to carry that out. It is a long one, but basically it's saying one day at a time, we're doing sort of that next right thing to sort of stay spiritually connected and grow that relationship with our higher power, okay? So one day at a time really is not, in the beginning, it's great to say in treatment centers and, first step meetings or whatever that, one day at a time I'm just going to stay sober. and one day at a time I'm going to ward off people, places, and things, and these triggers coming at me from different directions. I'm not a big fan of the word trigger. I think it's stressors, the more commonly termed, or the new term for that, because we sort of get to the amount that we're triggered is basically proportional to the level of our spiritual fitness, okay? So one day at a time works early on, like, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna hunker down and stay sober no matter what today, even if it means doing nothing but staying sober. But we can't just keep doing that. We can't go, 5, 10, 20 years of just staying sober today. We're gonna end up, powder dry and pretty miserable. We're gonna end up in probably a worse place than we were when we were drinking or using. So one day at a time is really, what am I doing each day to grow that connection, to become more spiritually fit, to help the next person, to take these actions. And again, progress, not perfection. That last time in treatment, after 7 years of riding the roller coaster and all different treatment experiences, I was down on the God stuff. I didn't, want to hear about spirituality really. I kept, I knew it was important deep down, but I was just so damn sick of hearing about it. And it was like, here we go again, long-term treatment this time, and it's going to be this stuff every day. And gradually my attitude improved pretty quickly. But the thing is, I was told, what the hell do you have to lose by practicing prayer? I'd prayed 1 million times in my life. Grew up Catholic, went to church every week, had all the sacraments. Many foxhole prayers after getting communion and kneeling in the pew. God, please help me be sober today, something like that. And then as soon as we got home, I'd go find my bottle that was stashed and get drunk. It was just, God, do this for me, but not really asking what I can do, to stay sober myself. It was just like magically wave this wand, make me sober, and no surprise it didn't work. Praying for outcomes, not for principles or actions or strength or courage or wisdom or power. So what we're trying to do here is connect to the power. As we said in page 45, lack of power, that is our dilemma. I was told, you're facing prison time, you're facing divorce from your college sweetheart, you've already ruined a good 15-year career, basically been unemployable the last 2 years. If you get a good gig, you kind of, within a week, you're drinking so much that you're already not showing up and it's just not working out. What the hell, why am I still holding on to this ego or this prejudice or whatever that, prayer's not for me, or I'm too good for that, or I'm too smart for that, intellectual, whatever. Prayer's for, foolish people, or people that believe in the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus. That was kind of my attitude. I remember somebody down there said, what the hell do you have to lose? Look at your life right now. And I couldn't really argue with that. What did I have to lose, right? Meditation. It doesn't have to be this elaborate 1 hour, sort of Buddha session where you're levitating off the mountaintop. Meditation could just be taking a couple minutes of quiet time to try and silence your mind, listen to your higher power, listen to whatever messages might come through. Meditation can be done through music, through exercise, through sitting quietly, through reading, whatever. It's just basically kind of, some people say prayer is when we're talking to God or a higher power. Meditation is where we're listening. Okay, and sometimes, this stuff can be difficult to do. And we'll get to ways to kind of get that sort of inner motivation, to get there. So Bill's story on page 13, early on, he's in Towns Hospital. We talked about this in the History of Recovery video. If you check that out, you might remember. Quick recap, Bill went back to treatment after he met with Debbie Thatcher, who carried the Oxford Group message to him. And it was similar to some of the AA stuff, but it was just early kind of raw version of it. But it was basically, they had a program that was helping some alcohol. It wasn't for alcoholics necessarily, but some alcoholics were part of the Oxford Group, and they were practicing certain spiritual principles that are also reflected in the 12 steps, and they were having success staying sober. And so Bill finally checks into the hospital in New York for the fourth and final time. And he checks in on December 11th, 1934. And by December 15th, he's already worked 11 of the 12 steps. So I like to talk a lot about getting through this stuff quick. The solution is in the steps. The solution is finding the power. And the 12th step is what promises us a spiritual awakening. That's the power. So why are we continuing to sort of mess around with steps 1 and 2, telling ourselves we're stuck on 3, just make that decision in 3 to keep doing the work. That's all you got to do. And then you start writing out your 4th step. Find a sponsor who understands you need to get through this stuff quick, and you can always go back and do it more thoroughly. That's kind of the idea. But the solution is right here. So why are we standing on the sidelines so much, thinking that just going to meetings is going to connect us to the power? Just going to meetings might help us, in a jam here and there, and it does, it's very, very rare you ever walk out of a meeting feeling worse than you did. I can't think of a time I've ever felt worse walking out of a meeting than I did walking in. But that's just meetings. That's just one part of this deal, right? There's a lot of other stuff we got to do. And so Bill, on page 13, he talks about, I won't read the whole thing, but he talks about step 11 near the end of the page, after he kind of gives a quick rundown of the different actions he's taken in treatment that are basically the 12 steps. And he says, I was to test my thinking by the new God consciousness within. Common sense would thus become uncommon sense. So he's looking to his higher power for guidance. I was to sit quietly when in doubt, asking only for direction and strength to meet my problems as he would have me. Never was I to pray for myself, except as my requests bore on my usefulness to others. Then only might I expect to receive, that would be in great measure. He's basically saying there, he's practicing step 11 by starting to pray, praying for how he can hear God's will of what he can do to help others, not just what he needs, not trying to go find a job, repair his relationship with Lois, sort of restore his standing in society and in the business world that he, horribly damaged, that kind of stuff. He's just praying for guidance and how he can, be useful to others. And that's on his 4th day of his recovery. Most of us on our 4th day, we're complaining about the meals at a treatment center. We're worried that our roommate is snoring, or we got to wake up early for groups. We're not thinking about this kind of stuff. And this guy went through, the only step he really didn't work was 9, because he's in an institution, so he can't really go out face to face and make these amends to people. He has a spiritual experience in that hospital. He has a white light, feeling of warm, and he has that sort of burning bush moment. Most of us don't have it that way. It's more of a, as they call it, like an academic variety where we sort of learn as we go. We have, kind of one step back, 2 steps forward, that kind of thing. But there's different varieties to find this thing. The book also gives us guidance on how to do step 11. There's on page 86, it talks about what we do when we retire at night as one aspect of it. And that's that 11-step inventory that we talked about a little bit on step 10. It just is a paragraph. It says, on page 86, when we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Okay? Constructively review. So we're not dwelling in morbidness and self-pity and aggression towards others. It's just an honest, objective review of what our day was like. Okay? Where were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? Were we kind and loving to all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time? Or were we thinking what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? I've always liked the phrasing of that. And then again it says, but we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, because that would diminish our usefulness to others. After we make our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. By the way, step 11 is something you can work on day 1. You don't need to do your 4th step and your 5th step and all your amends until you get to step 11. This is something that I would recommend, and it was suggested to me to work early on. And it helped. So, why do we have to wait until we do all the other steps? That could take a couple months or something, or start doing it right away, because we're just having a constructive review of our day, and we're trying to connect to our higher power that can ultimately be this source of energy that we need, in order to live happy, joyous, and free. So you could write this in a journal. You could do it in your head. If you want, I've got a worksheet already made. You could just email me, and I'd be happy to send it to you. You can share it with people you work with, or if it's something you want for yourself. I mean, heck, it's something that anybody could benefit from, not just somebody with substance use or alcohol use disorder. Objectively looking at it, it's easy to fly. I remember when I was working on this early on, I was kind of just
everybody, it seemed like all my peers too, we had to turn this in every night, part of the treatment program I was at. A lot of people just fly through it. No, I wasn't resentful, I wasn't dishonest, I don't know an apology, I did everything great, I'm on, 9-10 days of my recovery and I'm just doing everything perfect, I'm a spiritual little angel. It's all rainbows and jelly beans, and it had been stressed so much that I need to find a spiritual awakening if I'm going to recover, because I knew that I was a real alcoholic and addict. And I sat down with one of the person that works there, KCR, and if you go to Mad Dog Recovery, it's a good podcast I'll plug real quick. It has a lot of great stuff by Myers R, Chris R, Casey's on there. I think she might have a different last name, she was married. Mark Houston, there's just a ton, Peter M, Butch from Canada, I'm spacing on his last initial. Casey I was like, I'm doing these walks, these sort of meditative walks, and kind of like looking at, palm trees and smelling ocean air, trying to like make that, sort of give me a spiritual boost. And, it's kind of fleeting. Sometimes it would work, and sometimes I'd be back, living in that shame, especially early on from what I had done and gotten back in treatment. And she really stressed this 11-step inventory as the starting point for my spiritual growth. To really take a close look at this stuff. It was easy, like I said, at the end of the day to be like, no, I wasn't resentful, I wasn't dishonest. But when I really looked at it, my actions, and filled this thing out closely, there was almost always something, however small I was self-seeking or selfish. I took one of the last cheesecakes dessert. That was kind of selfish, self-seeking. There's 30 people there. Why did I have to have the last one? I'd already had one. Probably didn't need it. That's an example, something small. Or, added an extra coffee filter to the thing, to get that little boost of caffeine, which technically was a rule we're not supposed to do. That was dishonest. It could be saying something rude, about a peer to another peer, just whatever. It doesn't always have to be these big earth-shattering things, that are just a big spotlight, that it's obvious. It's just little things, right? The little things in life matter, and they add up and they build up. And if we keep ignoring us doing the little things and little dishonesties and bearing resentments maybe towards a staff if you're still in treatment, or one of your peers or something, or a family member or whatever, that stuff is it's gonna sink us eventually. So we gotta get that stuff out. So that's something we can do when we retire at night, in the evening, and then it also gives us instructions for when we wake up. And this is, again, right out of the book. Page 86 again, it says, on awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, and self-seeking motives. So right there's a simple prayer. If we're not sure how to pray, it's maybe we're new to it. Right there is something that we can pray for first thing in the morning. God, please help me not be, please help me be honest and not be self-seeking and not be, dwelling in self-pity today, as I carry out my actions throughout the day. It goes on to say, under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance, for after all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. And it goes on to say, in thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Here we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought, or a decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. There are just some times when, we wake up, we're still a little bit foggy-headed, or we're worrying about meetings we got throughout the day, or some big phone call or a job interview, whatever it might be, amends we got to make. And it's just, not always the easiest, thing to have that discipline to, sort of take this action every morning. My sponsor told me early on, before I put 2 feet on the ground every day, that I needed to pray and do the 3rd step prayer and the 11th step prayer, which we'll get to. It's a pretty short one. And consequently, that's what I did. I kind of had to get on my feet to get on my knees next to my bed, but that was the point. And then he would have me call him right as soon as that was done. A specific time every day, early in the day, to tell him what meeting I was planning my day around. Not where I was going to go throughout the day and just sort of shove a meeting in as it was convenient. You wanted the meeting to be the centerpiece of the day. That was my focus, my recovery, and everything else needed to work around that. So sometimes other ways that we can kind of unlock that block, that we might have towards taking some of these actions and surrendering our will, and really trying to tune in, kind of attune to what that message is from our higher power, and how we can carry that out. Some people just going outside, outdoors, being around nature is a quick way to kind of get in that groove. Music, prayer and meditation works for a lot of people. Maybe you got to talk to someone. There's a lot of other examples. Whatever you got to do to get you sort of in that zone, then just go ahead and do it. And usually you make a routine out of it, and it just becomes part of your day, integrated into your daily life. The 11-step prayer is on the bottom of page 88, and it's basically just we ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show, and the prayer is basically just thy will be done. Okay? So it's not about me, it's about what my higher power wants for me. And again, this is great stuff to do 30 years in. It's great stuff to do 30 hours. The more we put the stuff off, the more we're staying away from the solution. Last kind of thing on step 11, there's a lot of different ways to seek through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with the God of our understanding, okay? We got to find what works best for us, and we got to stick to it, and it's something that, again, we live steps 10, 11, and 12, so it's just throughout the day we're doing this stuff. We face a dilemma or a problem or a crucial decision we got to make, and it's not just, oh my God, I'm suddenly into panic mode and I'm, just doing other flighty stuff. It's all right, relax, pause, take it easy, ask my higher power, thy will be done. And the intuitive thought or action will almost always come. Talked a little bit about Myers R. I was listening to him speak recently about step 11, and he said, if you want to know what recovery looks like, it's a strong relationship with God. Okay, that is the key to recovery. It's not doing all this other stuff, it's not how much I'm benching now that I've been sober. It's not about what a great paying job I got since I've been sober. It's not about how many meetings I go to in a day or week. It's not about how many meetings I chair. It's about what is my relationship with God. That's a good way to judge where your recovery is at. So thank you very much for listening, and if you like it, please click like, and we'll get one out shortly for step 12. And we love you all. Thank you for listening and watching. Bye-bye.